Hello everyone, welcome to Memory Skills. My name is Ibrahim and I'm currently studying Bachelor of Applied Sciences in Project Management. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about some memory skills and strategies that are hopefully going to help you reach further into your journey from high school onwards. We're also going to be discussing what the definition of memory is, some strategies, and some effective study tips that are going to help you maintain your memory skills. Now, what is human memory? In simple terms, memory is the mental activity of recalling information that you have learned or experienced. Now, before we go in depth into what memory is, I want you guys to discuss for about a minute or so with the person next to you what you think memory is, what it means to you, and what the different types of memory there are. Okay, so as you guys would have been discussing, there are three different types of memory out there. There is sensory, short-term, and long-term memory. Sensory memory is like your hearing, seeing, touching, feeling, and smelling. And these senses are usually the first initial piece of information that gets attached through your senses to your memory. And it lasts for a period, it lasts for a subtle period, and it's regularly replaced by new data as our senses work continuously. Short-term memory, however, it stores small pieces of information, and it usually lasts for a very short period of time, with very limited capacity of information that you can put inside. This is mainly known as our working memory, because that's the piece of memory that we use the most. Then we move on to our long-term piece of memory, which is big pieces of information that you maintain throughout your entire lifespan, essentially. And these pieces of information are really reliant on your ability to remember it through its sense of urgency or its sense of importance to oneself. And that's how you gain long-term memory. Now, between memory and learning are two different meanings, but they share very common grounds. So with learning, it relies very much on memory because experiences and information must be stored to be retrieved. Whereas memory relies on learning because new experiences and information attaches itself to previous knowledge. So if you didn't have both of these working together, it would almost seem impossible to maintain a decent human memory skill. Short-term memory gives us the ability to remember and process information at the same time because it works really closely with our sensory. For example, in order for us to understand this sentence, we need to keep the beginning of the sentence in mind while we read it till the very end. And that's something that we do very much and unconsciously as well. However, in short-term memory has its limits. So I want you guys to tell me what you think your limitations are in terms of short-term memory and how long can you hold information for. To test out short-term memory, let's play a long string number game. Can you remember the string of numbers? So the way that we're going to play this is, let's say the person on the right says one number, and then the person next to them will say the same number and then add a new digit. And then the third person will repeat the first two numbers and add their number onto the game, and we'll see who goes the furthest. So as an example, it would be I would say number 5, for example, and the person next to me would say 5 and 3. and the person next to them will say 5, 3, 1. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is that the number cannot be directly above or below what the person next to you had said. So it needs to be a completely random number, and you need to be able to remember it. So no pens, no writing it down, just your brain. Okay, so that must have been a lot of fun, but from what we have learnt so far is that generally the magic number would probably be falling around 7 to 9. And if you guys had remembered anything above 9 numbers, then absolutely well done. You guys definitely have some good memory skills under your belt. But if you guys didn't manage to go above 7 numbers, that's absolutely okay as well. So generally the case is that it would take us about 10 to 15 seconds for us to forget the pieces of information that we had just been given. But what the key is here is for us to attach a second piece of information that is going to allow us to remember the first piece of information into the activity that we're performing. So, and a good example of this game would be not only to focus on the number that is being said, but also on the person that is saying the number. So, let's say Casey, John, and Annalise were here. Casey said 3, John said 5, and Annalise said 4. Then it would be and it would be my turn. I would know that Casey had just said 3 and John said 5, and so Annalise said 4, for example. And that's just a really quick technique for you to be able to visualize the information as well as remember it into longer than short term. And that's where you pass it to your long-term memory. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's fully going to be a long-term memory piece of information. It's only the practice that you put into that will allow you to remember it for a longer period of time. For now, I'm also going to just to get a general gist of where you guys are sitting. So I want you guys to use your own memory techniques and give me and try to remember this entire slide. So I want you, it doesn't have to be in particular order, but I just want you guys to use your own skills and use the skills that you may have just learned to remember what this slide is. You have 2 minutes and your time starts now. So that must have been a lot of fun, and I'm glad that some of you guys had given it a shot. Here are the answers to the list, and that's okay if you guys didn't get all of it. This is where we're going to be looking at the ways that we're going to memorize these pictures again. So, strategies to improve your memory. A good word for that would be mnemonic devices. It's a funny word, isn't it? Mnemonic devices are any techniques that you can use to help you improve your ability to remember something and encode information into your memory. They're widely used in learning languages. As you guys would have remembered just earlier when we were mentioning the attaching a second piece of information to the first, for us to be able to not only visualize but also remember that information for a longer period of time. And this is something that is exactly the same sense. They can also help us with remembering lists, remembering procedures, or helping us with the exams as well. So can you guys tell me if you guys know any mnemonic devices that you currently use yourself? I know that the word sounds a little bit unfamiliar, but in general, we use these techniques unconsciously to remember a lot of things. So I'm sure that you guys would have been using one in the past. I'll give you guys about a minute or so. Alright, thank you for that. So some really good examples would be acronyms or acrostics of mnemonic devices or narrative memory strategy. Some rhymes, to hit some hip hop in there or some poetry, some imagery in there, and my favorite is the method of loci. Um, we'll start with acrostics and acronyms. So an acrostic is a series of lines or verses in which the first, last, or other particular letter, when taken in order, spell out a word or a phrase. We use this pretty much every day, and a really good example is like the never eat soggy wheat bix, which is my favorite. Don't ever do that. And that's usually to remember the northeast, southwest. And a good acronym though would be, the first letter of every word being put together and to form its own word that we would be very familiar with. Something that has been getting used quite often recently is POTUS, which is President of the United States, or PIN, which is the personal identification number. But a fun fact is we're usually repeating ourselves when we say PIN number. So, so next time, don't say PIN number. Say PIN. But acronyms are usually something that we're very familiar with and that we use very much in our day-to-day life, but we don't pay very much attention to. And that's a very good thing because we've already trained our brains to be familiar with these acronyms without having to, focus too much on them or have a lot of learning to do for them. Some other good examples of acronyms would be like the MBA or VCE or VCAL or any of these really quick words that we have learned over time. I want you guys to come up with some acrostics or acronyms or even a rhyme, maybe a little rap if you may, if you guys are brave enough, to let me know. So I'm going to give you about a minute or so and you guys will do this activity on your own. That was great. Now moving on to narrative memory strategy. Humor is very valuable with this strategy as our brains tend to like remembering unusual or silly things. I'm going to pass it over to you again, and at this time you have 1 minute to think of the most vivid, outrageous story to remember the following shopping list. Now, I want you guys to get crazy with this one. Come up with whatever you think you're going to need to remember this shopping list, and I want you to remember it fast. Okay, so you have 1 minute, and I'll see you later then. All right, so that was great. Good on you guys. So with the method of loci, that's my favorite technique, and with this one, you create a mental journey along a well-known route around your house or around a particular place to help you remember pieces of really important information. To practice this technique, we're going to use a mental journey of your house for this example, and it doesn't exactly have to fit within the scenario or the building of your house. I just want you guys to get creative and go through with that journey. So I'm going to get you guys to close your eyes and listen to the following list. And then what I need from you is I need you to remember what the list was and where it was. Okay, so I'm going to start now and I'm going to start reading the list. Now, you go to your bedroom and on your bed you get the corn, and then you go to your wardrobe and you find milk. Now as you walk to the bathroom you see carrots, and then in the hallway you find a chicken. In another bedroom you're gonna see garlic, and in the living room you find the beans, And then you go to the dining room and you see the mayo, only to go to the kitchen to be greeted with a beautiful pizza. Now I'm going to repeat that for you again. So as you go to your bedroom, you find the corn, and then you go to the wardrobe and you see the milk. And as you go into the bathroom, you see the carrots, and on your way to the hallway, you see a chicken. In another bedroom, you find garlic, and then in the living room, you see the beans. In the dining room, you get the mayo, only to go to the kitchen to be greeted by a beautiful pizza. Now, who got their answers right? I'm going to give you guys about a minute or so for discussion, and then we'll know who the winner is. So that was great. Here are the answers to that list. I know that it was totally worth it to be coming home to that kitchen and seeing that pizza on the bench. I know that that's exactly what I'm living for. But a good fun fact, the reason why I love the method of loci so much is because I tend to lose my phone the most in my group, and the only way that I have not lost it totally and had somebody take it off me is because I've used the method of loci. So it's been embedded in my brain essentially, in the way that it is. I usually just retrace back to the last moment where I didn't put my phone into my pocket and follow through the steps until I remember where I had last left it. And it hasn't taught me something miraculous, which is like never losing my phone again, because I still am misplacing it. But it definitely did teach me to use my memory enough to remember where I put my phone back. Now, using all of the strategies that we had just spent the last 20 minutes discussing, I want you guys to try to remember the list of the slide of pictures here again, but this time using those strategies. And I want you guys to come up and be as creative as you can, and try to use the ones that relate the most to you. I know that we're all very different people, and we all like to remember things in different ways. You would have noticed this at the very start of the session when we asked how you remember things and what you think memory means to you. So when you are, doing this activity, just try to keep in mind that the method of loci or acrostics, acronyms, or rhymes, or imagery, or any of those sorts, try to use those techniques as a part of this activity. And let's see how creative we can get. So you guys have 2 minutes and your time starts now. Okay, so well done to those who had attempted the past activity with the strategies that we had been discussing in the past 20 minutes. Here are the answers. And to those who got the majority of the list right, well done. You guys have been really attempting some good job with some good work with your memory skills and strategies. So to those who didn't use any of the strategies that we had discussed today, maybe you should tell us a little bit more about how you used your memory skills to remember that list. Because, mnemonic devices are really helpful, and they're really broad in general. So it doesn't really have to be one of those particular activities that we did today, but it can also be something that is totally personal to you. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes for that. Well done, you guys. So, moving on to the final part of the presentation is doing some memory myth busting. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly explain to you the different kinds of myths that are out there and the true facts. So some people say, some people have bad memories, and that's just how it's going to be. No, just because dementia exists doesn't mean that you can always use it as an excuse Same deal. So not all of us have bad memories, we just have undeveloped memory skills. It's exactly like how muscle works. You know, if you want to get the results that you're after, you gotta pull in that hard work and do the gym right. So, and you gotta develop your skill set in the gym for you to gain that muscle the way that you want it to gain. Remembering too much can clutter your mind, and that's something that's quite often said during exam periods of schools. No one really knows the limits of the human brain, so I don't really know where this came about. I guess it was really something that is said by the lazy people. But really, nothing can clutter your mind as much as your own self can. So just practice to be calm and practice to remember. People only use 10% of their brain power. Now, this is really, really popular, especially in the past 15 years, give or take. This thought had really come about and really making people feel like they don't use their brain enough. But trust me, you know, we have brains and we are the smartest human beings on Earth. We are the smartest beings on Earth. So no one really knows the limit of the human brain. And I definitely think that you shouldn't be doubting your limits either. But yeah, what kind of learner are you? I've passed on a quiz to you guys through your teacher, and this should really give you a quick identification of the kind of person that you think, the kind of person that you learn through, and that's something that is really useful and really personal to you, because if you're able to identify what kind of learner you are, then you're able to identify the best ways you can teach yourself or the best ways that you're able to learn. Because we're all very different people and we all learn different ways, just like we all remember differently, and we all have different strategies to remember specific activities. There are three different kinds, which is visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. I'll get you guys to do the quiz in your own time and really get an understanding of who you are. It's so important for you to understand who you are more than anybody else telling you who you are. So just be honest with yourself and really get that quiz going. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes and then we'll talk about the benefits later. Okay, so thank you for doing that quiz for yourselves. I'm really glad that you guys got involved. Here are some study tips for those different types of learners that you guys are. So for the visuals, they're the ones who like to either really read into things or really visualize it in motion picture kind of thing. So either in a lot of visuals, a lot of pictures, and all of those kind of diagrams, or a lot of writing that you do yourself. So for those kind of learners, I would strongly recommend you guys to put information into diagrams and tables and maps. I know that this seems like a tedious process, but in order for you, if you're really passionate and if you really want to get your, if you really want to learn this particular piece of information, you would definitely put in the time to visualize it for yourself. Definitely use different color pens and different kind of highlighters, but don't overuse them, only because then it will confuse your sensors. And add a lot of drawings and illustrations. Make the most of the video resources on topics that are available for you. Only because there's a lot of videos that are out there that are going to give you a lot of information. But try to just pick out all of the right information that suits yourself and that is really understandable for you. For the kinesthetic learners, they're the ones who like to do things. They're the ones who like to get their hands dirty and really work with the system. And for those kind of learners, it's really, really helpful if you make role plays out of out of the scenario or the method that you're trying to learn. Recite and revise to yourself while studying. So while you're studying and while you're writing things down, really just take a moment to read it back to yourself and really try to understand what it is that you're trying to learn or convey through to the other side. Um, Type your notes out because you really like to be moving. I know one of my friends, they had really they were really a kinesthetic learner, and what it took for them to be able to absorb information as much as they can is for them to be able to get up and start running for about 20 minutes and then come back and do the work and that they really needed to do. They found that having the blood rushing through the system was a really good focus, and that's something that you guys might want to be looking at as well. Take breaks while you're studying and exercise. Definitely. I think that for kinesthetic learners, just like I explained before with that example, these kind of learners really like getting moving a lot. And if you like moving, you will learn a lot more if you move with your learning as well. So for auditory learners, which are the final ones, they're the ones who like to listen and really understand through hearing mostly. And for those learners, I highly recommend that you make words that you have to learn into rhymes. So, it would probably be the best way to go about it. Listen to a whole heap of podcasts. You don't understand the amount of knowledge that you're able to gain from these people, making these podcasts. I think they're amazing, and there's some totally awesome podcasts out there that you wouldn't have even known that are there until you actually look for them. This is something that is not always recommended, but it is something that is useful for the auditory learners, which is listening to music while you're studying. Because you find yourself to be a multitasking kind of student, maybe listening to music would help you gain focus back into the task that you have at hand. So definitely keep one of those in mind. Other kinds of study tips I would recommend for you is to review your content within 24 hours, and this helps 80% of the information retention back into your long-term memory if you had just looked over it again within the first 24 hours. Consider exercising before studying. This may keep you more alert and help you study longer. It just helps having all of the blood rushing through your system rather than, being rigid and uptight when you're trying to study and retain information that way. Practice old exams. That's something that I had personal confidence in knowing. I know when I was in high school, I did literally a whole stack of practice exams and old exams, and they were really a good key and a really good gauge to find out what the next exam is going to look like, because they don't really change the content very much, especially when it's maths or physics or chemistry or anything like those. Usually the content is around the same style, and the questions usually tend up to be around the same area. Close your eyes and recite as much as you can from memory. So this is something that I would recommend if you're trying to memorize an English essay, for example. These are really, really good ways and really good tips to get your, get your memory jogging and really quick at remembering what you have to write next. Explain your answers to someone else. Now, this is not so you can tell that person, although it is really useful for you to do that because it's a win-win, but it's not so much for you to be telling the answer to that person. It's more so you can really reinstate that answer to yourself and kind of legitimize how important it is to you. And lastly, organize the study with your friends. I think that having a study group is really, really important. And you never really get to notice that until you start going to a library and you see a lot of group of friends doing the same thing. I know that I ended up gathering one group of friends, and after schools we would all make a trip to the library and have lunch, and then study our asses off um, just so we can pass our exams and pass our subjects. And we did really, really well. So, having that close bond with a lot of people, just a small group of people, would really help you get further in your studies. And take regular breaks. I know this sounds really cliche, and I know that sometimes people don't recommend you because everything is running out of time. But take breaks because you're exercising your brain when you're studying, just like you exercise your muscles when you go to the gym. So take a break and take a breather and really enjoy that, but be disciplined enough to go back and go back after that break and finish off from that study. In summary, I hope that you guys learnt a lot with us today. We discussed what memory is and how it operates, looked at variety of mnemonic devices that help us remember information, discussed other learning and memory strategies, and some study tips for us to retain information and maintain it in there, in our memory for a longer time. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this session with me today. Good luck with your studies, and I hope you guys have a great day. My name is Ibrahim, and I approve this message.